Welcome back, everybody. Well, if you're gonna sell a house, what's the first thing anybody sees when they pull up? It's the front door, front porch, whatever it may be. So in this one, let's try to clean it up, make it look a little better. I won't get it all done today, but I'm gonna try to pressure wash the porch. We're gonna have to put a coat of stain on it. Then these porch posts are just 4x4s, and so they had some old barn lumber around them. So we're gonna try to dress those up, put a coat of paint on them. Obviously the landscaping needs to be touched up, and then we'll do a little work on the steps. All right, the pressure washer I'm using is a Harbor Freight Predator. It's a 4,400 PSI, 4.2 gallons per minute. But I know some people may say, gosh, Travis, why'd you buy Harbor Freight? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. It's because of this little generator. I bought this generator, I don't know, it's been 8 or 9 months ago, maybe even a year, because I needed some portable power. And I said, well, I'm gonna take a chance, because when I compared this to like a Honda generator, I mean, the cost is probably 25% of what a Honda would cost. But I will tell you, I'm gonna go out here, this thing's not been ran in probably a month and a half now, and I'm gonna see how it starts. All right, I've about forgot how to crank the thing. I think all we do is just turn it to start from my memory. Let's see how long it takes for it to crank. There she runs. That little generator, every time I've used it, I'll pull it one time and most likely it'll crank. Sometimes it'll take a couple pulls, but it's been pretty good. So that's the reason I'm gonna give the old Predator pressure washer a try. Who knows if it'll hold up the pump? Who knows? I guess the jury's out, but it's mine to try at this point. So I've used it 5 or 6 times so far. Say pressure washing is pretty self-gratifying. It's always pretty cool when you hit it and you can see that dirt come off of there. So anyway, I'm using the wider tip. I think it's like a 40-degree tip. But I'm gonna work my way down through here and we'll get this cleaned up. Well, the porch looks a little bit better, so let's see if we can dress up these 4x4 posts now. We got it started. I'm gonna put a little baseboard around each one of the posts, and then I'm gonna come up here at the top where the old, this was actually the stuff that was up there. It was just old rustic, and it wrapped the post, so I actually run it through a planer and slicked it up. But it's just poplar, So I'll come up here and put something at the top and then put like a little piece of crown around it. That way it'll dress them up a little bit. And then I may come in here with like a little chair rail to go around them. I'll just see what it looks like once I get the bottom and top done, but that ought to dress them up a little bit. All right, I made me a little cap up here for the top so I can cover up that little bit of a gap. So we'll go up there and cap it, and that ought to trim the top of the post off pretty neat. Well, it's been about 3 weeks since I started this project. Like everything I do, I got too much going on, so I had to pull off of it. But anyway, back over here, going to try to get the post painted and then my little cap pieces. But I just screwed me a screw over here on the back side to sort of hold it up off the ground. I'm just trying to get the top painted so when it goes up against the header, if any moisture gets in there, it'll protect it, and then the bottom. That way I'm not on the ground or up here at the top trying to cut in around my vinyl. So anyway, I'm going to get every one of them painted down through here, and then we'll let them dry, and then we'll slide them up into place, and then we'll go back and touch them up and then put a coat of paint on these posts, and we're to have it dressed up a little bit. Well, you can be your own judge, but a little pressure washing, a little trim, and some paint tends to go a long way. So I went ahead and painted my skirt board here under the porch, and then the stringers on the steps. I'll probably come back and put a little trim around the topper and make me some crown molding. I went ahead and just nailed my caps up and got them sealed in place. That's all I had made up. So I may get a few minutes sometime and mill me up a few more pieces of trim, go around the tops. But if I don't get around to it, I think from what I started with, we're looking a little bit better. I mentioned when we started this video that you got to get the place looking good, put it on the market. But I can only speak for the area in which I live in, but around here, the days of hitting that grand slam price when you sell a place seems to be over. I don't think I've ever mentioned on any of my videos before, but real estate business, that's what I do for a living. I've done it for about the last 17 years. But if you've been aware of the real estate market the last 2 or 3 years, it's just been, I mean, run and gun. It's been wide open. But in the last about 2 months, it's just like somebody reach up and grab the emergency brake and pull the brakes on. And, you know, people ask me, say, Travis, what's happened? Well, the interest is still here. The demand is still here, but it's the cost of money. If you're not familiar with Jerome Powell, he's the chair of the Federal Reserve, but you need to pull up on YouTube and just listen to his briefings that he's been doing here lately. But obviously, they've been going over their plan to sort of suppress inflation, in which they intend to do so. So with that, they're raising the rate. So our prime rate right now is we're setting the end of October 2022 at 6.25%. But it's looking like that'll be 7% by the end of the year. One thing people don't realize on that prime rate is that'll affect your credit card bill. So try to pay those things down to zero if you can. But with the interest rates, we obviously have came out of a time to where people were getting mortgages for, you know, in the high 2s, low 3s, 3.5%, 4%. And so money was almost free. But what's happened over the last 3 or 4 months is we've had interest rates go from 4.5%. Currently right now, and they'll be different from place to place, but they're hovering around 7.5%. Now, some mortgage companies will allow you to buy down points to buy the rate down, or buy points to buy the rate down, but obviously that's going to make your closing costs go up. But if we just look at straight interest rates, you're figuring 7.5% is what you're looking at. If you don't follow this stuff every day and you don't pay attention much to the interest rates, how you got your house and what's it matter? You know, nothing changes for you, but you decide you want to sell. How's this interest rate going to affect you from the price of your house? So I had a meeting a few weeks ago and I ran some numbers, but what I did was I took a mortgage of $200,000, and then I figured it at 4% interest, and then we amortized it over 30 years. So with that, you've got a principal and interest payment of $954. With the rates trending the way they are now, I took the same scenario, but I took a 30-year amortization and I plugged it in at 7% and wanted to see just how much money somebody could borrow and keep the same $954 payment. Well, they can only borrow $144,000. So $56,000 has went away because of the 3% difference in the interest rate. Now, when I ran the same scenario and I plugged in 8%, so we've got same 30-year amortization, 8% interest rate, and I want to keep a $954 payment. That took that loan amount all the way down to $130,000. So you got to think about, we've lost $70,000 in 4% interest, and that's obviously amortizing it over 30 years. But when you go out here and price your house, you got to think, do they really like it that much? And I think people were comfortable going from 4 to 5, another $125 or so a month. They'll eat that difference. When we're talking about $500 or $600 a month, when we're looking at a $200,000 mortgage, that's quite a bit of difference to swallow. Now that's just figuring on $200,000. Obviously, if you look at $300, $400, $500, and those numbers go on up, obviously the difference in that 1% rate is going to make a big difference. And what I'm saying here, obviously, I'm only going to speak to the area in which I live. We cover 4 or 5 counties here where we think we can cover it and do a good job. So I'm not going to speak outside this area, but the interest rates, obviously, that's simple math, and I think it's going to stand up across the country or wherever you are. So now the $1 million question that everybody's got is, how much value am I going to lose based on these interest rates going up? Well, I can speak to myself personally. We had another house that we had renovated and was, we bought it to fix up and sell, and due to contractors getting backed up and just everything else going on, we was a little delayed in getting it finished. So we didn't put the house on the market to probably about a month ago. If I'd have put that house on the market 4 or 5 months ago, based on what I could have sold it for then versus what we got an offer on it for now, is you're looking at about a 13.5% decrease from what I could have got. But I've had some people ask me here lately, they said, well, Travis, what do we do? And so here's the way I've sort of looked at it. As you look at the last couple years, that's what I call you've hit a grand slam when you've sold it. I mean, you've got out of the park, hit it over the river price. But the way I see it, as the rates do this, we were at grand slam prices. We're gonna go back to home run prices, triple, double, single, back to a walk. And so when you really look at it, based on if you bought that house in a decent market, let's just say you bought the house 10 years ago, you can still get a good price for it. You're just not going to get what you would have got 6 months ago. Here's the one thing I will tell you. If you're going to sell your house anytime in the near future, I think you need to pay attention to what the current market is. It's going to be tough when, Jim across the road sold his house 5 months ago and he sold it for $300,000, and then you're going to go looking at the market and the realtor is going to tell you, hey, this house is worth now, it's worth $350,000. That's not going to be, it's not going to taste too good. But I guess the thing we're all going to have to look at, and the way I looked at it was, okay, is $350,000 still in the overall scheme of things? Have I still hit a triple? And I think that's the way we're going to have to look at it. Here's one other thing that I would consider when you go out here and put your house on the market in the next little bit is, if you're going to hire a real estate agent to come help you, don't hire a yes man or yes woman that's just going to come in and tell you whatever you want to hear. Because if you need to hear the bad news and face the reality and catch it before you have to hit a single. And so, the toughest part about being a realtor is coming in and, when the neighbors sold for $400 and you're having to sell for $325, that's not a pleasant conversation, not something you look forward to, but it may be better than having to sell it for $290, depending on where this thing goes. Obviously, nobody on the selling side likes to talk about decreasing prices, but the good thing about real estate, if you're moving within the same area and you're gonna go from one house to another, is typically it's a swapping of nickels. So you're either gonna sell high. If you sell high, most likely you're gonna have to buy high. If you sell cheap, most likely you're gonna buy cheaper. And so the only negative now is you're gonna buy cheaper, but that rate, obviously you're gonna pay more per month than you would buying high. But here's, I think, what the saving grace may be. Obviously the rates, they're gonna keep taking them on up, but most of the time what goes up will come down. So the way that you can mentally think about it and be at peace is the fact that, hey, I'm gonna bite the bullet. I'm gonna take advantage of this decrease in price. And typically in these kind of markets, from what I've seen, is these are good move up markets, to where if you say, okay, I live in a 150, the kids are growing, we need a bigger house, we're gonna go to a 275. When you figure those percentages, a lot of times in our area, you know, the higher end stuff will fall a little more percentage wise than the smaller stuff, so you come out in the end. But you got to think about the fact, I'm going to eat it for a couple years until these rates come back, and then I'm going to go refinance it, and then we're going to be in a lower price, and then we'll get that rate back down there to where it's acceptable. If you are going to pull the trigger right now, though, one thing I will tell you, and everybody thinks this is a bad word, but if you went through that 2004, 5, 6 market, these adjustable rate mortgages, they were throwing them around left and right. A lot of people got in trouble on them. But there are some credit unions and some banks out here that offer these, adjustable rate mortgages. And so if you look at some local credit unions, like here locally, a credit union here doesn't really have to follow the same set of rules, and so you'll get some rates sometimes 1.5%, 2% lower. We're gonna lock you in for 5. We've got some 5 arm products that something you might want to take a look at. Obviously, when you talk about this kind of stuff, you could have 1,000 different scenarios and have 1,000 different opinions on how to skin the cat, but like the old saying is, there's always more ways to skin it than one. Well, that's about enough of a rant for me. But anyway, if I wanted to do this basically to, I guess, start a conversation, and I'd like to pose the question to you. Obviously, this YouTube stretches wide and far, but I'd like to hear what the market looks like in your area. And if you would, put it down in the comments. I'd like to hear from you and see if this is sort of the same thing you're feeling where you're at, or if it's not, how it differs from where we are. But anyway, I'll tell you, I appreciate everybody watching. We've had some new subscribers, and I'll tell you, I enjoy making these videos. Time has been limited lately, so I've not got to make as many, but hopefully we can put a few more out here in the coming weeks. But one other thing, when I finished the shop up there, I mentioned that we were going to start on a house here in the next little bit. I'll tell you right now, the way things are going, I'm going to sit back and wait just a little bit. I ran a lumber quote back in May, and I think that lumber quote come in at about 182,000 bucks. I ran the same quote about a month and a half ago, and it was down to 162. So we're struggling here with labor, getting people to show up to work. I mean, just like working on this porch, I've got plenty more to do, and I'd love to just hire somebody to come over and do it, but I ain't been able to find anybody. So that's the thing I worry about, getting a house going right now with winter coming. And 2, I'm curious to see where these prices go. So that's the story on the house, but we got plenty more projects to work on. But if you got any questions, comments, hey, I'd appreciate if you stick them in here, and we'll catch you all later. See ya.